Semdol kake mo faseda.
Welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online, recorded live on Twitch Saturdays, 1500 Universal Time. I am your host, Matterall, and today we have a full house. This is the biggest show we've had as far as people, over 10 people, but they're all good, so I couldn't say no. We're going to talk about Blood Raiders today, and let's get into it with introductions and get the banter going. All right. First up, I'm just going to go top to bottom on my screen. We'll start with, I guess it's alphabetical, Apothony.
Yes, I'm Apothony. I'm a member of Sniggardly in Pandemic Legion.
And we have Apple Bear.
Hello, I'm Apple Bear. I'm a member of Okyuko in Goonstorm Federation, and I sometimes FC.
And he was an FC on the Blood Raider raid that we'll talk about today. And sorry, that was Apple Pear, just so you know.
Yeah.
Would you say Apple B?
Apple B. We'll take Ash Drothy as long as we can get him. He may have to leave a mid-show. Ash?
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ash Drothy, CEO of Adoran Robotic, commander of FedUp, and Talk Around Podcasts. Hi.
Carneros with us. How you doing, Carneros?
Good morning. I'm Carnero, CEO of The Bastion, ex-CCP Zinfandel.
Dirk McGurk.
Hey, shalom. Dirk McGurk, member of Sniggardly and Pandemic Legion and co-host of the Open Com Show. What's going on, everybody?
And we have General Stargazer.
Hello, I'm General Stargazer. My corporation's Moira. The alliance is Velora Accords, and we're part of Galmil. Hello.
Jintan.
I am Jintan, member of Pentag Blades, a corporation within Curatores Veritatis Alliance, and I'm a FC for Provoblock and a CSM member.
And then we have Seamus Donahue.
Hello, I'm Seamus Donahue of EVE University, Professor of Capsular Studies.
And finally, Tiberius Stargazer.
Hey there, Tiberius Stargazer. Once again, proving that I'm not General Stargazer because we're on the same show today. And I'm a member of Destructive Influence in Northern Coalition. I am also one of the chief people over EVE Guardian as well.
No relation.
I think you're a sock puppet, and he's just got... Yeah, anyway, so let's start this off. There's definitely a lot to cover with lots of people, so this will be great. We're going to start, though, with Ash Drothy, who's going to talk a little bit about Blood Raiders, and then we'll speak to Apple Pear and Carneros about how it went. Ash?
Well, wait, hold on, what?
Blood Raiders? Do you want to
Yes.
talk about Blood Raiders? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, I actually have been a little bit out of the loop about this in the last week, but it's still enough to be able to summarize what's going on. For those of you who have been totally under rocks, in the last patch, a new type of PvE content called Blood Raider Shipyards has been released. It is a Sodio class shipyard that has a defense force that is utilizing the new AI, which is derivative of the Drifter AI. This week was the first week that the shipyard was discoverable. It became discoverable on Thursday last week. And then it was finally discovered and reinforced this week. There was a few attempts at first to go after it that met in tragedy from the sounds of things. The Blood Raiders were able to deal with a lot of different high-level targets coming in, but ultimately the Imperium were able to reinforce it and then later destroy it with a swarm of Punishers that were untrackable by the Blood Raiders. This is obviously a valid kill because CCP has put out an entire scope video talking about this stuff, including the fact that they use Punishers. That being said, the ultimate prize of this shipyard, the Moloch blueprint, which dropped, was subsequently stolen by a Test Alliance Please Ignore member who was then blown up, and that blueprint was lost. So the universe remains neutral. There is no Blood Raider capitals in existence or being built at the time, and another Sodio by the Blood Raiders is being constructed.
Awesome. And the person that was FCing, or one of the people that were FCing there, was Apple Pear.
Yes.
How did that happen?
No, the day before, yesterday we killed it. The day before, We sent our Punisher fleet there. They sorted that. Had somebody else, I don't remember the name, came up with ID after we had an attempt with Macarials that didn't go our way. So we reinforced it with Punishers. Yesterday we went there again with more Punishers, and we had a Jackdaw fleet to camp the gate and kill things. We killed some stuff, and some people came around. Tess came around with a lot of interceptors, and also a Jackdaw fleet that was a bit smaller than ours, and still decided to jump into us. I don't know why. And also some Ghost Legion. I think that's some new thing from NC, I believe, came with Real Goose and killed a lot of our Punishers. But we had enough to everybody reship. We killed the thing, and then we killed the people who took the loot because we shot everything. And yeah, it was an experience. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. We'll come back to actually how it happened, but I wanted to get some background on how you actually found it. I think Carneros was telling me that was a big effort.
Yeah, I was in that fleet that went around. It took about 50 people, about 11 hours of scanning to find it. It actually, we spent all day pretty much on Thursday working on it, and then we found it maybe the second hour of our work on Friday. So the location was known for roughly a week before we went in to do anything about it. And the main reason was because it was in Allied space. It wasn't in Imperium space. So we couldn't, we didn't have free run to just go traipse in. And diplomatically, we needed to smooth things out and be asked first.
Which surprised me. Aerith,
like vampires, they have to be asked in.
Yeah, Aerith was on last week's show, and he was saying how the only reason it's not dead yet is because Goonswarm hasn't actually tried to kill it, because we respect our alliances and we won't intrude on their territory. They get a chance first until they let us in, kind of thing. And there was kind of oh yeah, we know how to kill this thing, even though I was thinking like this thing's going to be impossible to kill, and it turns out he was right.
Yeah.
Well, my impression is we had 17 backup plans ready, but if that didn't work, we would say, "Oh, meant to do that," and go pull out, the next thing in the queue. And it's all a surprise, to me. We just show up and do what we're told. It's a lot of fun, though.
I think
that one of the big things why it didn't work with the Macarials is the problem we have had with big fleets also is that at one point all our guns red cycled and also reps red cycled. So we couldn't apply damage to it anymore because nobody could shoot it. So I think that was one of the reasons why we went with Punishers, is that you only have to click F1 once and it keeps shooting because unlimited ammo. So we didn't have the same problems with the red cycling again. And that was like the big deal when we tried it the first time.
Ash, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, one of the things that I like about this is that it's all about subverting expectations, right? We all knew that the Sodio would spawn in Imperium area because, it's Blood Raider, so it has to be there. Turns out it didn't. We all knew there'd be like this huge epic fight, and I put this in quotes. But ultimately, it was taken out by small kitey ships, which honestly, anybody who's taken part in large-scale content for PvE in the past kind of probably suspected that was going to be the case. But then, of course, like I said, the blueprint also didn't get taken. So a lot of the expectations, a lot of what we thought where we would be at this point, thanks to this shipyard, is not true. We have no capitals being built. It's a really interesting reset to everything, which in a lot of ways makes this perfect for what CCP wanted this for, because this is designed to test the high-end content and just watching to see how players deal with it. And so the fact that they did it with Punishers, perfectly fine, emergent and part of the whole deal. Now, I bet you CCPs in the background, they have like at least a week to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to turn on the flak cannon on this thing?
Maybe less
disagree. And I'll disagree with CCP being happy with what just happened.
I agree.
I'll tell you why. While it was a very good test of the AI system, superb. It was real world It functioned. It did not go down. We were able to complete the scenario. It was all there. That part was true. But this wasn't designed to just be a test. It was supposed to be a new piece of PvE content. And it's supposed to be a new piece of high-end PvE content, but also scalable and can be completed by people of various abilities.
It was absolutely designed to be a test. They said it was designed to be a test. That's what
Well,
it's for.
it's always a test. I mean, right? I mean, look, this is a new thing that they put out. It's always going to be a test. It's always going to be something that they need to work on. And this is something that I think they need to seriously work on, because basically what you had here was players that, and you're right, it's emergent, to sit there and run ships that flew under the radar of 600 NPCs that could not hit them.
Yeah, just to
and
throw
would
it in
warp
there.
off, come back, and guess what? Ship wouldn't be there, so they'd go, "What up, boss? Well, warp back to the ping again. Let's warp back to another one. Oh, he's not there either."
But let me make sure that let me be clear.
Oh.
Okay, in the past, we've done things like drifters where there have not been real rewards for performing that content. And when we talked to Larrigan before this, one of the big concerns was if this is broken and it just starts releasing these things into the game, it could potentially be problematic. And that was kind of the nightmare doomsday scenario. So the fact that this quote test, or whatever you want to call it, this experience cost CCP nothing. The thing that they baited it with was destroyed, which means it doesn't matter if it went well or if it didn't went well or whatever. They can work on it for the next iteration. And they haven't, the sandbox itself hasn't really been disturbed because of their choices, which is an important thing for CCP as they're testing this new AI.
General?
I think they did build.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go.
Let me get General in here, then you, Dirk.
I was going to say there's a couple of things I was going to chuck in on here. So first of all, we had the video come out just before the release from CCP Antiquarian. We did turn around and say like that there's still maybe some tweaking ongoing for the whole surroundings of like how we go about engaging it, because there's only so much that they can actually test. The other thing was there was only 2 mass tests on the actual Satoyo before on Sissy, where we actually had a complete mixed bag of different types of ships. We had capitals, we had short range, we had long range. So there was no real kind of essential doctrine that was tested there. Not to mention the fact that I don't think there was any real huge volume of small ships, which is essentially what has ended up killing the thing. So it's going to be interesting to see if they do kind of what they did with the drifters, as Ash was kind of pointing out before there, that they were developed, they were brought into the game, and then as time went on, they adapted and became stronger, and they learned how to counter other targets.
Right. Well, okay. So again, the whole point of all of this is that CCP, Larrikin and his team, Phenomena, right? I think. At any rate,
Yes.
They are building a new set of tools with this AI in order to create new engagements, new types of missions, new types of experiences, new events. And this is their kind of big release to kind of showcase off all of the different pieces coming together and allow them to test it. So that way, you know, like maybe in 2 months we'll have an event with like little cruisers and frigate stuff that operate under the same AI. The mining fleets before this were very cool, but again, they didn't have a big reward behind it. This is the first time that CCP is saying, okay, our stuff is battle ready, let's fight. And yeah, the players got first round, but honestly, it's a fairly simple technique and one that CCP is going to be easy to counter next time. Like I said, they just need to turn on the flat cannon.
Seamus?
Yeah, I was just thinking that when this Blood Raider shipyard shows up next, it could very well be in the region of Stain, for example. I would not be surprised if the Sancha and the Blood Raiders are buddy-buddy.
Apple, you had something you want to say?
I don't think so, that because they said it would be in the Blood Raider region. So there's the 3 regions, Delve, Quirius, and Period Bases. But one thing people like, and all PvE, don't forget we had like 600 people from the Imperium there being busy with this shipyard. We had a full fleet of Punishers, we had a shitload of Interceptors, we had a Jackdaw fleet there. So there are a lot of people who were around to get this done and have fun with it. So yeah, what is the end all of PvE? having such a big group together to get something done is, for me, like makes it more fun than only have in incursions a minimum amount of people who was before the end all of PvE. So yeah, it's more a bigger group thing. I see that as a big added value.
Well, and that's a good point. Maybe at this scale, you could do it with frigs, but certainly not with smaller groups or even different groups. If you had this group broken up into 5 or 6 groups that were coming from different areas. So this may be the only way it can be done, and it can only be done by a group this big, because that seems like a pretty giant fleet. And they kind of did it undisturbed, right? Like nobody came to really contest that fleet or to try to pick them off.
We had test with an interceptor fleet, and we had a railgoose, like 20, 30 railgoose shooting our Punishers. But I think we went to 200 or something like Punishers, but we had enough with us to reship all the time. So that worked well.
How did they get the loot? That drives me crazy.
How the structure is 50 to 100 kilometers long, so it's very hard to defend against it for people to take the loot. From one end to the other end of the structure, you were almost out of jackdaw range to shoot the people and avoid them to getting there. So it's very hard to defend against it. There are ways, of course, and we're already talking about it, how we want to do that the next time. But that makes it easy. And for us, it was not really about the loot. We didn't really expect to get the loot for this because of all the people who probably were coming there to try to be the first. For me, it was most important that we killed the dudes who had the loot, so nobody has it.
I'll disagree with that a little bit. On the first time, yes, there's something to be said for just being the first one and trying it out and doing something historic and fun. On the 10th time this comes up, the loot will be a factor.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're going to upper management saying, I'd like a large fleet to go and do this thing over here. In fact, I'd like 2 large fleets. They're going to say, we don't get anything out of it. Why are we going to go spend all this money, lose all these things? So the loot part does need to get eventually fixed. You're looking at a PvP/PvE encounter. They build it as a PvE encounter, but only part of it is PvE, and then it turns into PvP for the loot part. So that needs a little tuning as well. I'm not suggesting what that would be. I'm saying the current thing doesn't function and it'll eventually get dropped and people won't play it anymore. It'll just be abandoned.
Meaning after all that, somebody should get something out of it.
Well, normally if you put hours and hours and hours of effort in over multiple days, you get some kind of reward for your effort. Most games.
Ash?
It is an interesting point because so incursions give a very concrete reward to everyone. The primary reward here are incredibly high-end things, and yet it requires a large group of people to do it. So it's as you were pointing out, it's very apt. Getting everybody to do it for the first time, that's simple. So the real question that's going to come out of this is, how are people going to kill it the second time, the 4th time, the 10th time? And eventually, I think that those blueprints will become easier to loot. I actually disagree that they're going to, like, quote unquote, make that process smoother, because honestly, the mad dash for the loot is kind of one of those mechanics that CCP has always loved to watch people fight over in all of their events and whatnot. But it will be interesting to see how this evolves, not necessarily because CCP has changed anything, but just because after it, each iteration is going to be a different story. Next time it won't be the first time. How many people are going to show up from that?
And, and as you go further down the road, because supposedly, what they're looking at is also other factions out there having these things. So, if there are ones that are going on up in the north, in the east, in the west, in the south, is it going to be one of those things where where you've got people who are showing up like this?
I want to point out there's a lot of good information inside of the chat log, which is a benefit to people who watch the replay of this or show up live to watch it. So there's a lot of discussion about how they got defeated there as well from Jay Amazingness and other people that were probably participating. To me, it seems kind of interesting that not only did Test grab it once, but they grabbed it a second time. It just seems like what? Where were all the Punishers? Why didn't they grab it?
I don't know.
Nobody knows the answer to that.
Well, it's
They
because
died. I think we didn't say that they could take it, and people are pretty good with those kind of
Oh,
things.
that's interesting. So there are so many people there, nobody assumed they could take it. That's
Well,
really interesting.
wasn't there also something with the issue of the size of the structure and where they were orbiting, and then where the loot can drop? They were actually a ways away from it. And I mean, did those
Yeah, it
test
was-
interceptors warp to the can?
Yeah, they warped in. They
It's
were
a-
sitting at the perch, and they warped in as soon as it got killed.
that is game design designed to give an advantage to people who were not participating in the scenario. That
So
should be locked in
basically,
there.
you needed a hand. You needed like the hand squad that were out there waiting to warp into the can, because your front line was not going to be able to just motorboat over to it fast enough.
But wait, this blows my mind though, because you're in nullsec, right? So you have
Time
warp
for bubbles.
Interceptors?
Yeah, interceptors exist, mate. Bubbles don't mean anything anymore.
No.
Yay,
Interceptors
nullification.
need-
So you know what that reminds?
They should die.
You know what that reminds me of? Like in Mexico or here in LA, we have piñatas, and it's like you're the kid with the blind kid with the stick banging on a thing. It breaks open, and everybody's blind with sticks, and like only 2 people jump in and grab all the candy. All right, a little cultural enrichment for you, Dirk. All right, Jin, what did
Need
you
a
have anything to
piñata
say?
wall.
Jin, you've been kind of quiet. You normally something's wrong when that's happening.
I wasn't involved in this, and like I've already.
Yeah, but you're a
talked to-
CSM member.
Yeah, as a CSM member, what's the feedback you're going to bring back to home base?
Yeah, are you getting all this? Are you writing all this down?
I'm just gonna tell them to put target painters on their fucking ships. Like,
Well,
you
you know what?
I-
You know what? I brought that up yesterday when we were having a chat sometime during the day, and I do wonder. And since Ashtaroth's here, is there some sort of lore thing that says that the Blood Raiders are somehow culturally adverse to using things like target painters? Because when you heard what Larrikin said when he was talking about this in previous times, you know, that these will act like players, they will fit their ships like players.
Yeah,
it's more that-
it has to do, as far as the lore is concerned, I would say that it has to do with the technology that they use and the technology that they focus on. Specifically, the Blood Raiders focus on neutralizers and webifiers because they don't want to kill their enemy. Their job is to dismantle their enemy so that way they can take over the ship and capture all the people and drain their blood and stuff. So they're actually not highly equipped at, like, you know, blowing up ships. That's why the
do they know
Sodio
they can
itself
go
is
to
all
Jeddah?
nukes. Say again?
Do they know that they could go to Jeddah and get some
Blood
target
Raiders-
painters?
The Blood Raiders can't go to
They're
Jeddah,
minus
mate.
10. They
Yeah.
can't go to Cheetah.
Send an all.
They also, I mean, like, there is a certain amount of, like, the NPC versions of ships are less customizable because of the fact that they're crewed as opposed to capsuleered.
Oh,
Yeah, but like real talk, they should be able to have fit their stuff better. And also, I think some of it was just problems with the AI not understanding how to deal with a non-traditional fleet composition. From what I
Yeah.
understand, the whole intent of the AI was to fight other fleets that were set up in the same way as it. And EVE players are the best pen testers for any sort of system like that. So they'll just bring something crazy. Your AI has no understanding of how to deal with it, and then it eats shit and dies.
Yeah,
They'll
and-
fix it, I'm sure.
The first time we used Macario Fleet, we had done that on CC also, and we had some success with that. But we were not going to go on Macario Fleet there again if at 20% we had it the last time, or 30%, all our guns are going to red box because the server couldn't deal with it anymore. So yeah, that's also one of the decisions why we went with this. Is you only have to shoot once. You are pretty much uncatchable, and why put so much ISK value if you're not sure if the server can handle it?
So-
Again, I strongly predict, I suppose, that there will be major changes, or at least a change to the Sodio to give it defense against such things. They've got multiple options. They've got the autocannons or the flat cannons, and then they also have they don't need target painters. They are some of the best webbers in the game, besides, or at least range wise.
Well, I mean, and again, one of the problems was the fact that they would warp off to approach, they would come back, and the ship that they were going after would not be there. And rather than look for another local ship right there, they would just rinse and repeat this kind of warp off, warp back. Ship's not there, move on.
Well, that's a kicker.
The starbursting mechanic essentially is what you're talking about. The one that we were just showing on the stream. Where they basically they fly out and then regroup and then point at a particular place.
But even with real fleets, if we have that fast ships in real fleets, they're almost hard to catch if you're moving like 3,700 meters a second. With ships, try to get a warp in and burn to them fast enough to catch them. You are not able to do that also. So yeah,
I mean there is a
fleets from Kellogg's.
Hey, I'm going to say hi to Arturus OG, who was hanging out at Open Comms yesterday. Glad to see he made it for this show, too. He woke up. Let me ask a higher level question, because we're getting into the weeds a bit about process and stuff, but this is great. I do want to ask just the general question. Are people stunned that Goonswarm or the Imperium took it out as easily as they did?
No.
Not even a little bit.
Nah.
Everybody saw this coming? I don't know.
We can't test for everything.
And there's one thing that EVE players have always proven time after time after time is that it doesn't matter what system you make, they'll always find an easy way to break it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's built off of a known enemy type, right? So like the Sodio, we fought them before. The ships all kind of mechanically work in a way that you would expect. So, it's not like they were totally unknown. Plus, they got to see the 2 live tests, and I'm sure that they were paying attention. And so I would actually have been quite surprised if they had gone over a week without finding some sort of way of working the system. As I said before, I think that the more important way is to figure out how they're going to beat it the 4th time when it's no longer interesting enough to get so many people in Punishers to show up.
We are part of the Imperium, huh? And yeah, does it have to be that much interesting always? And
it's money.
Yeah, we are already planning for things and looking into how it works.
Crab, yeah. As Jay Amazingness says out in Twitchland there, on its face, it probably looked easy. I mean, there was probably a lot of time theory crafting on how to do this, whether it was on Sissy or in watching the Red Alliance rattlesnakes get ripped apart, because again, I think that this was built with the intention of if somebody tries to drop the world on this thing can fight back. Now, what it wasn't expected was that somebody was going to come through with a low tech biplane that these things just couldn't couldn't get at.
Well, I still disagree.
Hold your thought for a second, because I do want to give credit to Cynthia, who is the one that figured out SIG tanking.
Yes, that was the name. I'm bad at remembering names.
Good. Yes, just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Revra, for that little fact.
And one thing, Jay is completely correct. It was a bit stressful, and it was not stressful because of figuring out all the things and those kind of things. It was indeed you had to build everything and make sure everybody got reshipped all the time. But you have 600 people on comms, 700 people on comms, everybody talking, everybody asking you questions that for the 20th time, and a lot of unknown. So it's all things you have to figure about. And after that fleet, I was pretty tired.
I bet. Ash, sorry to interrupt you. What'd you say?
Yeah, I was going to say that the fact that it was beaten with SIG tanking shouldn't have been amazing to anyone. I mean, it's how the drifters were originally beaten. It's how Sancha occasionally the idea of SIG tanking to deal with high-end PvE content is about as old as high-end PvE content is in EVE, right? So it's really not that big of a surprise. It's just more or less, it's the fact that they were able to use ships that could SIG tank and still hit the Sodio's damage requirement. Those two things combined is what the Imperium is good at.
INN carried this live and got hundreds of viewers watching it as it was happening. And there was a couple other streamers did the same thing. But there was definitely 1,000 people checking it out. Did this make good TV, or was it kind of boring? These kinds of things. I guess it was just the first, so maybe that's why it got such a high viewership.
It depends on how much of a slideshow it ends up being.
I guess that's true. But not everybody's going to have as many Punishers out there as the Imperium can produce. It seems like to me like Imperium is definitely the biggest, most organized empire out there. Like I can't even think of anybody else that could have put this together. I may be wrong. Could other people have put this together?
I think that it totally, you totally could have. Like once now that it's been established, I think that other entities could like throw a big party if they wanted to and get people in. But I don't think like an entity could do like we are going to go do this as a total in-house entity, except for, well, I don't know, 200-man fleet, right? So
yeah,
that big a number.
Yeah,
I
I mean
guess
that's
not.
not so unreasonable, but there is a bunch of like the logistics and like, you know, securing the area. And there's a lot more to do than just can I ref the freaking thing.
They could bat phone for small stuff too. I mean, no one ever does, but they could.
Yeah. All right. Well, we talked out of this topic. Should we move on to other news inside of New
Well,
Week?
did somebody have any knowledge of like when they think the next one will spawn? Are we looking at like another 2 to 3 day kind of wait as it gets built again someplace else? Does the building of the next one begin a day later, and then you have to wait another day for it to actually be built? And
I had heard immediately, but to my knowledge, no one's put any effort into going and looking for it yet.
If I can decrypt what CCP Larkin said, I would say that it either will be the length of time it takes to construct a Sodio or 2 days, because basically what I'm leaning towards 2 days, because if you think about it, it was released on Tuesday and Larkin commented that Thursday would be the first time it was discoverable. So I'm thinking that like any given day, if it like the server wakes up and there isn't one, it just begins building it, and it takes 2 days to build it.
the server is sentient.
Well, that's literally how this AI works. It looks for conditions, and based on those conditions, it makes decisions.
Because Blood Raiders only have one construction crew. Right.
Exactly.
Well, this is their secret Titan base. So, and that's one of the things that's my closing thing, is just that I really hope that CCP not only continues to work on this AI just in general, but I hope that CCP is smart enough to like try to make sure that there's a surprise every single time, because I think that that's the reason, or that's what people will tune in for, right? So like, what if next time about halfway through suddenly the flat cannon gets turned on and all the Punishers just get waxed, and it's like, well, okay, next time, you know, whatever. And then like the next time halfway through the fight, a Moloch actually jumps in and like starts doomsdaying people. Like it just every single time, just have something a little bit different, so that way it's not clockwork.
I think
that reminds me of.
I think you've also got to worry about that they need to find a new FC.
One at a time. Go ahead. Wait, let me hear Dirk and then Jintan.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I think they also need to find a new FC, because obviously he didn't know how to adapt to player actions.
I was just going to say that this reminds me of the last time CCP tried to do an advanced kind of AI, which was the Drifters, specifically the Drifters Incursions, where there was a very fun little game between the developers and the people who were running them, where every time they'd find a way to break the AI, the next couple of days there'd be a hot fix for the AI, and they'd have to unbox the puzzle all over again. It was very, very entertaining.
But then it did also get to the point where it was like, it's now so difficult that there is no point in running this.
Eventually, it ended after CCP stopped patching them, basically. Now they're dumb and they don't adapt anymore, and it's sad.
They do still adapt.
Not on the same scale.
No, because we can just
not on the same
them.
scale. But yeah, it's not like a case of they adapt themselves every week. But what I was going to say is, like, what point do you think that the Blood Raiders will stop adapting? Or do you think it will get to a point where the players won't be able to kill it at all?
I don't think it'll ever get to that, but I think the intent, and this is something I talked to them about, is to emulate the Cthulhu, the Eye of Cthulhu raid in World of Warcraft, which was a raid that was considered for some time to be quote unquote mathematically impossible, because it was so difficult to do. You had to perfectly execute everything, or you would just lose your entire raid. And I think that's what they're trying to emulate here. They're trying to create PvE, which is so fucking hard that you are forced to lose people in it, that you are going to struggle, that maybe sometimes the PvE, the E does in fact beat the P, which isn't something we see in high level PvE.
So we may get our own More Dots video?
Yes. So to be clear,
was the next-
once
yeah.
again, just to remind everybody, this whole thing exists because Team Phenomena is building new event tools, and that this is their first big event that they're using, A, to test the tools, but B, to showcase the tools. So every single time that we're finding things about the Blood Raider shipyards, we're not just finding it about this one event, but it's for future applications, right? So if this becomes quote unquote unbeatable, this was the come at me bro, right? So this is the designers have always said, you know, it's easy to design a fight that can't be beaten. It's interesting to find a fight that's hard but can be beaten. And CCP does not have a lot of PvE design under their belt. You know, especially the new team of CCP people, that none of them have really made large scale PvE or interesting, engaging PvE content before. They're working on the tools for it, but you know, this isn't Blizzard. You know, they haven't had quest makers who have been making quests for a decade. They made their missions and then haven't touched it for, you know, over 10 years. They made incursions and didn't touch them for 5 years. So this is something that, you know, across the board is building up just their capacity to do good PvE content.
Got it. Apothony, then Apple Pear.
Yeah, I just want to say that going at even more, it's worth noting that currently in the field of research in general computer science, AI and how we understand AI and the AIs we can create is something that's really been picking up speed over the past couple of years. Like it's become a bigger and bigger and bigger field. So we can hope that with that being expanded in the realm of entire human knowledge, that when it comes to how we implement AI in games, we are going to be able to create and learn a lot of new tools, as it is currently advancing development of understanding on a human level, not just on a gaming level or even a CCP level.
And
Apple?
one thing you don't forget is that PvE in EVE is not only PvE. There's always a PvP factor in there, so that's something they have to take in account, because if they make it like only workable with if you have that fleet comp and one enemy shows up to fuck you over and you cannot do it anymore, that's also a thing you have to think about and not make it too hard for that to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Ashrathi has to say goodbye. Thanks for showing up today.
Yep.
Take care, Ash.
There, Ash.
Fly safe.
At the
Go ahead.
10,000 foot level, looking down on EVE Online, one of the areas where it needs to improve is the PvE. Ashtarothi pointed it out that a big chunk of what is being relied on for PvE content is 10 years old. And this is, you know, arguably one of the weaker areas of the game that needs to get lifted to a higher level. And obviously this set of tools is a huge part of what they need to do that. A little bit more needs to be done still as well. So not just on tuning the AI and the challenge levels, but also on those technologies' application to PvE content needs to be tweaked a bit too.
I was going to say they have got some experience with the Drifter Hives as well as a PvE content mechanic. I mean, they've been introduced.
Oh, sorry. I am interrupting you just kind of so that people can follow along. Let's change into that because I want to talk about the drifters compared to this. And you're somebody who actually knows a lot about drifters.
Yeah, so I looked at them when they originally came back into the game, and they were basically their evolution as they came into the game, seeing what mechanics they reacted to, what things they didn't react to. But in terms of like your modern day drifter, you now have them in your C5s, your C6s, and then you have the dedicated C13s, or whatever you like to call them, the normal smaller wormholes that are shattered wormholes. The mechanic in those is purely for PvE. It's a case of you go through them and you get shiny things at the end. The shiny things at the end, we still don't know what they're for. But it's a case of it's an instance, essentially. It's a PvE instance. The whole thing's been designed as a puzzle, and you get to the end, you get your shiny. When it first came out, it required coordination in the sense that you needed like two groups of people to go into them and go through the whole entire instance, and you had to unlock things at the same time. And then it's a case of CCP's then kind of nerfed it a little bit in that you don't have to have that mechanic anymore. So they actually made it easier to try and get people to go through it and actually do the events more. But again, that was a case of it's a purely PvE thing. I've been running them for 2 years now. I think Drifters have been out, and it's still to this day. It's only I'm yet to have a PvP encounter in the wormholes because there's people that only ever go there is purely for PvE. So it's interesting to say because I mean obviously they are looking at developing more PvE stuff, especially with the Blood Raiders Satoyo as well.
Well, and this whole next patch is going to be PvE, isn't it? Or well, that's what kind of
yeah, they hinted during FanFest that to coin the phrase, winter is coming, and the Drifters storyline appears to be continuing to be developed now for winter. Given the two hints that they gave was obviously the continued pictures of the destroyed Jove observatories, and the final room in the actual Drifter hives was also pictured, which a lot of people may not have actually been aware of. That was again one of the pictures, which is called we nickname it the Pickup Sticks room. It's the Nexus transfer room, which is the interesting one of being in the game files as Jovian Stargates.
It's called Pickup Sticks because it looks like a bunch of pickup sticks. That's funny. Carneros, did you have something?
If we're comparing the Drifters and the Blood Raiders, the Drifters are partly really exciting because they're so mysterious. We all feel like we know who the Blood Raiders are, especially if you live in the South and you fight them regularly as PvE content. They are. We feel like we know what they'll pick in a ship choice. We know their armor tank. We know they'll do this and that. We know what their tech is. Drifters, we don't really know what they're doing. They've got some other things beside shield, hull, and structure. Shield, armor, and hull. They've got this, weird doomsday thing that they can do sometimes. We don't understand their background. We don't understand their motivation. They're interesting. That gives CCP a broader palette of tools to work with, I think, and it means that we're not going to think we understand what we see the first time we see it as quickly as we would for Blood Raiders or Guristas or Angel.
Yeah, I mean, the Drifters have, as you quite rightly say, the element of, well, if I mess up this encounter with this one solo battleship, I'm going to be hit with a doomsday that's going to do, well, it's going to kill me, unless you're in a capital ship. Obviously, yes, the Blood Raiders don't have that element to it, but they do have the whole AI technology behind it in that you get a pack of 30 Ashimus that suddenly starburst out and then come back in and pick a target. They drain it to death and then just weapon newt it to death. And you don't have that with the Drifters. Yes, you're certainly right there. It's going to be interesting because obviously the way the Drifters are designed, that it's maybe 1, 2, or 3 Drifters is generally what you encounter. Their scouts are essentially the Autothisian Lancers that we see around New Eden from time to time now. The Blood Raiders don't really have that. They just have numbers and they have traditional firepower. They're not really. You're very right in that they're not that mysterious. We kind of know that the damage they do is going to be EM and thermal, and the damage you deal against them, you can adjust accordingly. We don't have that real knowledge for the Drifters.
Seamus, you wanted to talk about something, Care Bear perspective from HiSec?
Yes. One of the other things with PvE design is also looking at the payouts. For those who don't know me very well, I'm primarily a high security Care Bear. During the rare times when the university is at peace, normally I'm running missions and incursions in high security space. From my own perspective, I would only run player versus environment content outside of high security space after looking at the potential risks and rewards, the risk-reward balance, basically. It's been a while since I've tried looking at low security missions, for example, but my perception on that is low security missions, as an example, just doesn't pay out very much for the potential risk of being ambushed in my mission running battleship while I'm out there. So I just don't touch that stuff. From a probability perspective, the expectation value on that is negative. So just another factor that I think CCP would have to look at in designing the loot payouts for PvE outside high security space. I imagine that I'm not alone in that perspective, but that's something I'm a little less sure of.
Are you also talking from the perspective of looking at it as an individual doing a mission? So one person doing one PvE mission? Is that what you mean?
Quite possible, yeah.
Because obviously a lot of the newly developed AI and PvE related stuff is all what I call group content. The Drifter stuff, you're talking about, as I say, not leaving HiSec. Well, all the Drifter Hive ops, yes, they're shattered wormholes, but every single op that we've been on, we always leave from a HiSec wormhole and enter, obviously, a wormhole system. We run the entire instance and then return to HiSec again. It's you're looking at the risk versus rewards from an individual person as well versus group content. I
Good
mean,
point.
would you development of
surrender?
Future PvE? Yeah, exactly.
All right. Seamus, do you have anything else that you wanted to respond to, or?
No, he brings up a good point there.
All right. We'll consider that tapping out. Just be playful. But I wanted to ask, is there anything else you guys want to talk about with the in regards to Blood Raiders, how it went down, what the consequences are for the game, what we can look forward to in the future? Again, lots of comments in the comment channel, lots of guests inside this panel. It's very orderly, which is amazing. The Tiberius, Apothony, Dirk are giving people a lot of room to talk.
But
not,
look, I do think that we need to consider the fact that this is an iterative process, right? This is the first of what we believe to be an ongoing set of changes related to PvE. And I do think that they are ultimately going to, be able to work this out so that we have something more than kind of just the static rinse and repeat thing that we have right now. And, as we move into this whole kind of thing of group PvE, it doesn't have to be group, but it can be. That's going to, become a very interesting piece of things, right? I mean, there were some people yesterday talking about, well, PvE doesn't matter. PvE does matter. It matters to a game. Even this one, in those in-between moments between when you're doing whatever your, Eve Simulator is doing in other places.
I'm always going to go back to what Larkin said, which is that there's a lot of people that you don't speak for. There's whatever you do, there's other groups that feel very strongly about
it's bullshit. We're the media. We're the media. We speak for everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, the PvE, you say that about the PvE is important. So what aspect of this game doesn't have a PvP element to its PvP? I mean, anyone can jump in on any PvE operations anywhere at pretty much any time.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's a big component of Eve is the non-consensual PvP. Like you could be doing your pedestrian thing and there's always a way in some way that somebody can affect what you're doing. And it puts you in relationship to others, which I think is important. So like one of the keys of Eve are it's one server. So everybody knows everybody's reputation and history. Things are valuable. They have consequence if they're taken from you. And 3 is that everybody has the opportunity to be connected with, like it or not. And those 3 things are powerful. They create the powerful simulator that everybody uses to be competitive. So, all right, Tiberius, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think PvE is very important in the wider scheme of Eve to help shape the landscape. This is one of the first bits of content that will be eventually rolled out. Every area that has their own NPCs will probably end up having their own similar content unless CCP runs out of steam on development or decides not to continue it for some reason, which gives it an interesting landscape because you can then it doesn't become just about the PvE element and the group activity and people getting together and getting ships into space, which is the ultimate goal of PvE, because then people can interact with each other. But it provides a resource unique to particular areas of space. And I think this is something in the last few years that hasn't really been leveraged too much. Like with the distribution of moons being changed, the distribution of mineral and some of the unique complexes that used to happen as well being changed. There's not much to differentiate from various areas of space other than the drops you get from your 10 of 10 complexes and the rats that you shoot. And I think this is probably going to be an important part to provide unique and interesting content, because we might have a Blood Red Soyoto in this one, but you might have a completely different structure that gives you a completely different sort of or similar sort of drops in another area of space. And I think providing people with that reason to own that space, to control that space, to get access to this content is a valid enough reason for groups and organizations to get together and start trying to aim for control of it when there might be an absence of other drivers to make them do that.
Yeah, it's not like you hold a region just purely for the sake of holding the region and being able to produce capital ships. You hold it for other PvE related reasons as well.
Absolutely.
Seamus, you had one last thing on this?
Yeah, I only just thought of this a couple of minutes after General Stargazer's comment. So in regards to doing group PvE content outside high security, then the balance that I would consider important there is that it does have to be profitable enough on a per person basis to justify bringing a group. Again, going back to missions as an example, I'm under the impression that danger, Will Robinson. I'm under the impression that bringing a group to a low security mission is overall less profitable per person per time than if they just stuck to high security.
That's why people multi-box, so they become their own group. And
Yeah.
they get all the benefits.
Well, I mean, if you want to run missions in low sec, you just do level 5 X or a carrier and you make fucking bank.
Do you
really?
as well with,
Yeah, you
smart
do
one.
actually make
Smart.
fucking bank. It's really good money.
Well,
Like
I mean, you
said,
look
I'm
at
mostly a high security Care Bear, so a little outside my area of expertise.
Doing
I mean, you
alone,
look
yeah.
at like groups like Nocturnal Romance and things like that who control Cobrin specifically for the level 5 agents there, and they go and run them, and they just live in that region specific area space specifically to run the level 5 missions.
All right, free comms in 1 second. I want to introduce Noisy Gamer, who joined us. We're going to talk about Plex in just a minute. Thanks for joining us, Noisy. How you doing? And tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Nosy Gamer, and I have a blog called The Nosy Gamer, and I basically will hang around in low sec, and mining is kind of pretty nice out there.
Which is pretty rare. I've been around a while and I haven't met many low-sec miners. I've met a lot of all kinds of people, but not low-sec miners.
It's like 5 of them. He's one
It's
of
like
them.
too
They don't admit.
dangerous. Too dangerous. He's like an oil rig worker in a volcano. All right. Where do we go to next? I mean, we want to. This guy. You guys can just open up discussion, start talking among each other, answering each other's questions. But let's talk about Team 5.0 on CC. What do we have there?
Oh, we're talking about the squad changes.
Well, I mean, there was a number of things, and hold on, let me find it here.
There's a whole list of quality of life changes. Yeah, it's so
yeah,
good.
and some of them are actually quite good. These are the one of the things is that these are on Sissy right now. So if you want to go out there, and, check it out.
CC being the test server, by the way, for people who don't know what that is when we refer to it. Yeah, it stands for Singularity Server, which is a test server, which means you can go there and practice theory on the new stuff that's coming out. So you don't actually risk a bunch of stuff when it actually comes out.
I linked it in Twitch chat, but I mean, just some highlights from it. Capacitor and shield are going to fully recharge upon docking and undocking from structures. So that's kind of nice. But really, you get down into some of these changes for fleets. We are no longer going to hear who's got boss when the fleet commander or when the boss of a fleet disconnects or logs out, right? That is now going to pass based on a hierarchy, starting with wing commander and things like that. So it's never just going to go to some random person in fleet anymore.
It'll go from top down.
It's going to go from top down. Things like the fleet window is no longer going to automatically close when you leave a fleet. But here's the really interesting thing, right? We know that a fleet consists of a maximum of 256 pilots. That is going to stay the same. But things like squads that were limited to 10, you will be able to put everybody into a single squad if you want to. You will be able to create up to 25 squads per wing, 25 wings per fleet. Not saying that you would necessarily do that, but you are going to be able to micromanage the entire fleet hierarchy a lot differently going forward.
Yeah, so now if you've got 50 Logi in your fleet, you can actually just make a squad of 50 Logi, for example, if you wanted to. If you've got 30 tackle, you can have them all in one squad. You can sort them out like that, which is a really nice change.
Oh, so nice.
One thing I love about the changes is being able to have hotkeys for broadcast, align target, and those kind of things. That will make my life so much easier.
Oh, from an FC. Yeah, interesting. When are these changes supposed to hit, by the way?
Well, these right now, again, live on Sissy. So these are things that are being, tested out there now. But I would suspect in relatively short order, maybe I think it's for 119.6. So that June should be when they go live.
Okay, cool. Did you read through all of them? I couldn't tell how much of it you read through. Did you stop after? Did you just pick out?
I just picked out some of the highlights. I mean, there are other things in there that might mean more to the watch list now shows ship icons, fleet members in structures, and when they say structures, they mean new citadels and things like that, right? Will now show as docked in the fleet composition. The fleet composition window will update in 20 seconds now, as opposed to 60 seconds from before.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal when you're sitting there going, how many Logi do I have?
And one of the other things that is very nice is the cycles for Sino and triage and those kind of things will have now a timer, how long the cycle is still. So that will make that a lot easier also. You don't have to think like, oh, do I have now 5 minutes or 5 minutes and 30 seconds? You know exactly.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah.
I did like the small change they put in for the people that collect hordes and hordes of things. Added the option in the inventory window to allow sorting by estimated price.
I was going to ask, who's that big for?
Yeah, just the people that just keep the hordes of stuff in their hangar.
So let's break that out a second. If you keep a bunch of stuff in your hangar, you can now sort it by its value.
Yep. So you can finally figure out why your apparent assets value is hundreds of trillions of this, because there's that random one item somewhere that's actually worth a lot.
Yeah, I suppose this helps mission runners too that have a bunch of stuff they just collect while they're doing their missions, and then they sort it. You used to sort it by meta, to say, okay, I'll just throw out meta 1 through 4 and keep, or whatever, 3, and then keep 4s. Just because normally 4s are more valuable than 1s or 2s, and so that's how you would kind of sort it. But now they actually have the value, so you can.
Well, back in the day when I was running missions, you would trash the items that were below a certain level, and now you'll be able to tell what those items are, even though that scrap metal processing isn't that good anymore.
Yeah, but because sometimes a Meta 2 module was, if it actually fit in a certain way, expensive or popular.
What I typically do is that I just simply collect all that mission loot, and every few months I'll actually run JEVE assets and have JEVE assets do the calculation of these items are better reprocessed, these items are better sold.
Yeah. All right, so this is cool. Those are the. Is there anything else in there that's pretty cool? Some favorites in there?
The ships being shown on the watch list. Oh, so I can finally know if the thing I'm going to try and lock is a pod or not. Is Logi.
Yeah, that's good for Logi.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
You've
cool.
been wrapping something, and now it's suddenly a capsule. Yeah, that's good to know.
Because you don't want to be sitting there and locking a target for
10 minutes,
10 seconds, and then by the time you lock it, you have to then go and unlock it. It's actually a real pain in the ass if you're very
Well,
bad at Logi like me.
And pods take longer than usual, don't they?
Yeah, because they have
25
high
meters.
music.
Yeah. The smaller, it's just so you know, for people who are kind of new, the smaller the ship, the longer it takes to lock, especially if you're a bigger ship. So a very big ship takes a long time to lock, a very small ship. And there's your basic mechanic. We should have saved
40,000
that for.
seconds divided by whoever.
Oh my God!
The scan resolution times the square
Can you
of the
calculate, boys?
hyperbolic arc sine of the target signature radius.
You have the calculation. That's amazing. Sorry, I interrupted it. All right, you can go to EVE University to find out that calculation, or talk to Seamus after the show.
And if they now
yeah.
for Logi broadcast can only show it on the broadcast window, what type of ship it is, then I don't have to log all those frigates anymore that broadcast. Even if I tell them don't broadcast, that would be so sweet.
So that's a wish list. That's not something that's coming.
No, that's a wish. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Cool. Next, we're going to talk about another change that's coming, and that is skill injectors can be broken down.
Can we just back up just real quick?
Yeah, let's back up.
I linked it, and I don't want to say. Let me just interject something here real quick, because I don't think it's something that's going to take a whole lot of time. But color blindness support is coming to EVE Online. It is currently something that you can also test on Sissy. So if you know somebody if you are colorblind, or you know somebody that plays EVE that's colorblind, they want people that are actually colorblind to go out and test this on Sissy and give them feedback. So in the dev blog that they put out, there's actually a survey at the bottom of that that you can kind of give them feedback to see, does this actually work.
On an amusing side note, it does allow your UI to actually officially become pink.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
oh my gosh, people are going to be happy. I'd like to say that in this game, it's very important to tell the difference between red and green, especially with like siege cycles and stuff like that. So that's a big deal. Also, the overheat button is green, so it probably looks gray. I don't know how that looks. I'm not colorblind either, but I just bring this up because, or Dirk brought it up, but I think about this because when we did the CSM interviews, there was a few people that were saying one of the issues I want to bring to CSM is the issue of color blindness. So it sounds like it's been going around for a while as an issue.
Yeah, I'm seeing on Wikipedia about 8% of men and 0.6% of women are colorblind.
Or about 7.99999% of EVE players.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help any of these people when you say, the gate is green, the gate is red. I mean, because then they just really don't know. That's why people jump.
We were joking on Open Comms.
Gate is actually chartreuse.
Dirk had some. What did you say about sound? That you were going to raise your voice.
Enhancements for the hearing impaired will come in the Open Comms show when Dirk gets loud later.
He starts yelling at everything. All right, cool. Yeah, that is pretty neat. Do we have anything else that we want to talk about as far as those changes before we move on to Plex? Because I think this is kind of interesting. We get into a little bit of economic news. So Plex, somebody want to serve this up? Apothny, do you know what this Plex change is?
So if you think about the old Plex to new Plex, it's being divided from one item into 500 little items. They saw what happened with the Plex, and they're like, oh, this is pretty cool. Let's do this for injectors. Only we are not getting rid of old injectors. Old injectors are staying, to best of our knowledge, the same as they ever were, but they are being renamed to large injectors. So unlike Plex, which took the big thing and turned it into a little thing, and all we have now is lots of little things, we are going to retain our big thing, our big skill injector. I think the official name will be a large skill injector, but we are gaining another item called a small skill injector. I can't remember the stats on exactly how many skill points each one will take, but it is
It's 1/5, 100,000.
Cool, thanks, Dirk. So it's 100,000 skill points, so it's a more granular way to get your brain goo addiction off, and certainly more approachable way for newer players to get involved, because they might not necessarily want 500,000 skill points. They certainly probably can't afford it. Where if it's like, oh, if I can just get 100k more skill points to get into a Vexer with drones to 5, then I can make money and actually make the money better. So it's a better way to ramp up that income if you're planning on doing it through gaining new abilities through injection for newer players.
Carneros?
Sorry.
Did you have
Yeah, no, there was the skill injectors and there's also the Plex.
I think they're actually related, but go ahead.
That's what I was just going to ask. Is there a relationship between the two that's causing the ISK price of Plex in the trade hubs to go up right now? Is it just that numbers are that Plex are just in short supply right now, or is it just that there's a trend among player behavior that they're trying to market manipulate it more at the moment because they comes in smaller pieces? What's going on, or is there something being driven by the new injector stuff, or what am I missing here?
Okay.
Noisy? Yeah.
Yeah, I think okay. So I haven't done the math on it because it's only been like 10 days or so, but it looks like the amount of transactions involving Plex have gone up. I don't know, between 25 and 40% maybe. So there's more of a demand, but until the last couple of days, the transactions were smaller on average than before. So it looks like there was just like a lot more being bought. Overall for the month, I think the demand for ISK has gone up like 5%. So people trading game time or the Plex, which is game time for ISK, the demand for the ISK is actually going up. So I think that may have something to do with it.
Wouldn't that bring the price down? Because that would put more Plex in the economy, which should drive the price down.
No, that's the demand. So the demand is for that. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. The demand for the Plex, I think, is going up. So people are like wanting to buy it more.
Is that because they're trying to convert more alts to being Omega time paid through Plex, or is that because they want mini Plex for some other reason unrelated to Omega time right now?
I think it's related to other things that you can buy for less than 500. I'm not sure though. It could be that before people wouldn't want to convert their ISK. They'd want a skin, but they didn't have 1.3 billion ISK in order to get a Plex in order to get their stuff out of the cash shop. Now they can buy smaller things in order to get their skins.
I don't think it's unreasonable to say as well that if the amount of skill injectors required is a lower volume in terms of actually getting what they want, that there's going to probably be an increased demand for them as well. So that you're already going to have people buying them in advance now to potentially either hold on to or just sell.
Maybe the demand is driven by that ghost to training thing.
Well, yeah. And before we get it, look, number one, now that Plex and Aurum have been combined, the uses for them, right, have been combined down into just the single Plex, right? You now have all of the demand drivers strictly related to Plex now. That is one thing. The other thing is also because you had basically the Plex split, right? It looks cheap. And just like with a stock split, okay, when that occurs, chances are that there is, kind of upside potential to that just because things look cheaper now.
Yeah,
I think you've got market traders out there that are taking advantage of that situation, and they are. I'm not going to call it manipulating. It's not manipulating. It is. They have found the opportunity to kind of reset this at a bit of a higher price, and then of course you've got all the supply and demand mechanics that are involved.
and I think, certainly a lot of that is the granularity of it has meant that there's a lot more of it being used. Like beforehand, if you wanted to get something out of the Aurum store, you had to buy either the Aurum or you had to buy an entire Plex and convert that entire Plex into Aurum to get something out of the store. Now you just go on, you put in some cases, there's items in there for 10 Plex. You just spend 25 million ISK on 10 Plex and you get the item out you want out of it. And I think that accessibility has also meant that there's a lot more consumption than what there would have been before.
So as with anything else, right? There are a number of factors that are potentially driving this. It's not just one little conspiracy thing out there.
Yeah, well, that's usually the way it is, isn't it? The more ways that Plex can be used, the more demand there is, the higher the price goes. So that's why it's tricky to say. And I'm not an economist like Rivra or a lot of the guys that she hangs out with in Caleb's SCC channel, but it's pretty basic to me that at any time CCP can say, "Oh, by the way, you can now pay for video cards with your Plex," and boom, that's gonna like inch the.
That was one of the things from the time the old Plex, when it was 300 million and then it was 600 million and people were screaming because of the price, and 700 million and then it hit $1 billion, right? The demand drivers that they would add over time to it were going to help push that price higher. Not to mention the whole thing of, ISK faucets in the game and the ability for people to leverage using Plex to make more ISK, to buy more Plex.
We know a lot more income has entered the game, hasn't it? We were talking about this the other day. Noisy, do you have those figures or?
Well, I think back maybe last June or July, there was the ISK faucet was about 25 trillion a month, and I believe in the last MER it was up to around 60 to 70 trillion a month.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
But yeah, I mean, you were going to go after kind of the ghost in the room, right? So let's do that, because there's somebody out there saying it's entirely the ghost training bug. It's never entirely anything. Yeah. However, that could very well potentially be something that is driving it. Although Plex has been rising, again for a while in the lead up to the Plex changes into the Plex split, it was running up. Now, could potentially it also have been the people out there with massive farms who were participating in what is ostensibly an exploit?
I have blurry memory, but did we talk about that during this show, or we didn't bring it up yet?
We have not brought it up yet.
Okay, so maybe we'll do that in a second. But go ahead, Noisy.
Yeah, I just want to bring up one other traditional thing that makes the price of Plex rise, and that's the Alliance tournament. And I'm just wondering, are we in the beginning of Alliance tournament season where people are starting to snatch up Plex in order to bid for positions in the tournament?
It should be, yeah. I mean, it's coming up on that.
Coming up very soon. Yeah, the rules. Are the rules out yet?
Are they doing the silent auction this year?
Are they doing what?
Because they are doing a feeder tournament. I'm not sure if they're actually doing the silent.
You still got to come up. Well, hold on. You've got two aspects. Okay, so you got 64 teams, right? I believe it's the top. What is it? Top 16. The top 16
are reseeded.
Are automatically get in, right? Okay, but it's a 2,500. It's a 2,500 Plex entry fee. Then you have got 16 teams that are open to a silent auction that begins at 2,500 Plex. And then you've got 32 teams that will come in through the feeder rounds, but you have to put 2,500 Plex up as a deposit. If you get in through the feeder rounds, they take your 2,500 Plex. If you get knocked out of the feeder rounds, you get your 2,500 Plex back.
Yeah. So personally, 2,500 Plex, that's 5 old Plex. So while not a minor investment for a single person, unless you are, market trader level rich, for an alliance, coming up with 5 Plex, even, Provi, Jintan will get behind me on this, can afford 5 Plex if they look down the back of the sofa.
It's about $90, right? $100.
So, I would assume that that's not really going to impact the price of Plex. Further, if you fail in the feeder rounds, you are, to my knowledge, refunded back your entrance fee. What can cause the Plex price to rise is the people who are going in the silent auction. The highest bids we saw, if I remember correctly, were just pushing over 100 Plex for entrances in the silent auction last year. When you have a couple teams going that high, I would assume that the Hydra Reloaded team, for example, would either go silent auction for the confirm or save the money and just assume they're going to win in the feeder rounds, which is probably a fair assumption for them.
I think there was the silent auction last year was, some of them were a lot more than 100 Plex. I think some of them were pushing 250 Plex.
Yeah, but if given the feeder rounds which you can participate in, I would assume that for the teams that know they are really strong and thus are desperate to get in, they don't have to worry so much about dropping crap tons of money on it. Because even though it's more guaranteed than the feeder rounds, you can expect an NC of last year or a Hydra of this year, they will have no trouble getting in through the feeder rounds. All of their real competition is actually being seeded in from last year. I can't think of more than Hydra who aren't already reseeded that I know of to be a good team. I mean, obviously it's still a risk, but it is that. So I personally expect the numbers we see of the silent auction to be lower this year because of the existence of the feeder tournament.
Right.
And would some of these teams be like using real money to convert to buy ISK in order to fund their run, and so they may be doing it now if they think that it's cheaper to do it now?
I mean, using real money to fund your Alliance tournament run, in my mind, is insane. Like, it's absolutely insane.
Ludicrous.
Not unheard of.
But I know, but like, so like you're to properly run an AT team, you are looking at mad bank. Even if you are not expecting to get to the top 8, i.e. you are not expecting to require a Cash of Alliance tournament ships, you still need to set up a reliable way to have access to every legal module and ship in the game that you could possibly want to run and have replacements for them. So a lot of the market manipulation we see during the Alliance tournament are things like Sleipnirs or things like Balgorns. Like pretty much every year, somebody buys out all the Sleipnirs in the market, relists them at 3 times the price, because inevitably someone will have run out or have forgotten to buy their Sleipnirs before tourney time and thus need to buy them on the day. Further, if you do that for common ships, it means that if they are stupid enough to buy them in Jita anywhere close to the time, if you've bought them all out, you know exactly who is buying those hulls and who is planning on flying them.
Well, that's how deep the meta gets, huh? And for those of you that don't know what Dank Bank is, or what'd you say? Well, I don't know, Mad Money? Mad Bank.
Mad Bank, yeah.
For us older people, that's a lot of money. Just decoding.
Dank Bank is an entirely different thing.
Yeah,
that's a whole lot of money.
I mean, the Alliance tournament is like the difference between stock car racing all the way up to the Formula One. You know, that's like the money difference in comparison, because you need hundreds of billions of ISK to
like
run
a proper flagship will cost you up to the price of an actual AT prize ship, like just to kit out your flagship properly. It depends from flagship to flagship, but like if you want to bling out a Balgorn, or if you want to bling out Heaven Bid a Navy Scorpion, which is a popular flagship, like I think the flag Navy Scorpions we usually see are in the realm to 80 to 90 billion ISK, and that is a ship on your team.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, we'll leave that there. I wanted to really quickly, was running out of time, talk about what some people speculate. So if it's not the AT tournament that's causing this Plex buy-up, I actually did want to ask, I'm going to divert here, this is not on the schedule, but Noisy, you were talking about, because you watch the black market, right, where people trade ISK illegally, that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What's going on there?
It looks like there's a ban wave going. There was one particular seller that CCP apparently has on farm status, because every month around the middle of the month, I see I see lots of their buyers getting banned. Mm-hmm. But this month, it looks like there's additional sellers that are getting their clients, their customers banned. So it looks like something's going on, and so lots of real world money, like maybe $1,000, $2,000, something like in that neighborhood, is getting snatched up. People are just buying the stuff and then immediately getting banned.
Yeah. And you also said something interesting, that by watching the black market, you can kind of tell what kind of financial year CCP is going to have. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, like last year, as far as, with all the changes that happened in the EVE, with the introduction of skill injectors, and at the end of the year the free to play, and some of the activity that went around with the Citadel's introduction, or some of the more advanced stuff, you saw on the black market, you saw a lot of activity, and you saw them, you saw the amount of money that they were making, at least in sales, go up significantly, and CCP wound up having their best financial year ever. I'm seeing, with the free to play, it looks like that's really pushed the RMT up, the black market up higher, and if the percentages are maintaining, it looks like CCP is going to have a really, really good financial year again this year.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good sign. We always like it when CCP does well. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about, and this is last of the game news, I guess. The what was it? Oh yeah, Ghost Training could be influencing Plex prices. Dirk, you know a bit about that, right?
You know what? I really don't know a whole lot about this other than the fact of apparently, okay, there is a bug out there that allows for ghost training. And what ghost training refers to is being able to train. Back in the old days, it meant your account still trained even after it unsubbed, right? Well, we no longer truly have an unsub because you go to alpha status. And an alpha trains at half the rate of an omega and only has a certain number or certain skills that you can train on an alpha account. Well, apparently there is a bug out there that if you are an omega and you are training an omega Q at full speed, and it lapses, your account lapses and becomes technically an alpha, that unless you log it back in again, it continues to train at the same speed and training omega skills while it is unsubbed. Now, with all of the skill point injector farming going on out there, apparently this is a known thing amongst the dark world of skill point farmers, and it appears as though you either have the potential or it is occurring that people are exploiting this thing.
I think it's for an existing skill as well. So if you've got a 30-day skill and it's running, for example, at the end of that 30-day skill, when it picks up a new one, it then detects that the alpha status is there and it reduces the speed. I think when it's a concurrent one, as in it's a very, very long skill, the status doesn't change on the skill training speed.
Yeah. So again, this is going on out there now. Some people are speculating that this is potentially widespread enough to be driving the plexing. And I think that we can sit there and we can speculate as to whether or not that's the case, regardless of whether or not that's the case, that it's affecting Plex, right? This technically affects this other thing that has become, in its own way, a form of currency in the game, which is skill points. I mean, back in the day of the original, ghost training that they fixed in, I think, 2008. Back then, it was just a matter of, number one, we didn't even have like the really super long extended queues and things like that. But it was just a matter of somebody getting a time advantage for free. Here, you've got the potential that, number one, somebody out there is gaining an economic advantage in the game, but also that CCP is technically, from their perspective, also losing out on Plex being needed to fund those accounts. So they're losing out like in an actual real money kind of sense. Whereas also you've got people who are potentially gaining advantage through the ability to train at a higher rate for free. And then come back and strip their characters down.
Yeah. Hopefully they fix it.
Yeah, I really question how much this ghost training would actually affect the market. If you take a look at like the first quarter of this year, the amount of Plex that were sold in JITA was a little over 3,800 Plex a day, and that was pretty consistent through each of those months. And so that's 3,800 a day. How many accounts really need to be Plexed? I mean, even if there are 3,000 ghost accounts like that are doing all of this stuff, and they need to be Plexed, that's less than 1 day's average trade in JITA. I don't see how that's really going to affect the market as much as we're seeing right now.
No, and that's why I say there's always a number of factors that are involved in what's going on with, say, the price of Plex, given how liquid of a market that it is. One of the things I think that we also need to point out here is the fact that because this is a bug, right? or what I would think is a bug. Number one, CCP has not commented on this yet, which is something I think they need to do. I think that they need to put out there the fact that they know that this is there, and either they are going to call it an exploit or they're not. But theoretically, you could passively exploit this without ever knowing that you did it, or you can at least passively benefit from it. You just go away from the game and don't come back, but you had a queue that was running and whatnot, right? It's the people that are knowingly taking advantage of this, by then coming in a couple months later and stripping it down and then rinsing and repeating. That's where you get into what may potentially be an active exploit, and then you wonder, is CCP going to somehow reverse this stuff? Is it going to be so widespread? Because theoretically, anybody who was an Omega that then kind of let their accounts lapse because they're just not playing, are they going to have their stuff stripped out? Are they going to lay a ban hammer down on this at some point? I don't know. I mean, they need to comment and acknowledge this, because this shit is going on out there.
We know they've known since FanFest. So,
at least FanFest, they've known about it.
Yeah, I'm sure they are not just sitting on this, but they probably didn't want it to get too publicized. No, the only reason we're talking about it is it came out on Reddit, so it is getting publicized now. So, but people that have known about it, yeah, people at INN have known about it since FanFest, but haven't published any information on it. Which I take as I don't know why, but I take as a courtesy to CCP, which is kind of cool.
Well,
all right.
The other
Noisy,
thing,
go ahead.
I should add really fast that according to the EULA and TOS terms of service, that going around talking about the exploit and publicizing it and making it spread actually is a bannable offense. So
we're screwed.
Yeah. So
we're all dead.
You know what? Honestly, we are not telling anybody here something that is not going around out there. This is a known thing. Number one, it was publicized someplace else. Okay. If they want to ban for us or for anybody sort of raising a ruckus about this, nobody, even the Reddit posts are not saying, hey guys, here's a way to make money. They're basically saying, look what you could do. CCP, fix this shit.
Yeah, I think that we're at the point now where nobody's going to get banned because of this, because it became widespread in other ways. It's just that why did it take so long for everybody to start talking about it? Well, if you're a player, you're going to be hesitant because it is against the rules.
All right, quick switch. Then we got to finish up, and we'll talk to Epothany about the Alliance tournament.
No, okay. So the
Boom,
Alliance. The Alliance tournament rule set will be announced on Wednesday, apparently, or around then. And when the rules come out is when the AT season officially begins. That's when people know what they're practicing. It's when we start coming up with team comms. It's when the real practice begins. So, as of Wednesday, the AT is on, ladies and gentlemen. So things to look for in the announcement. So point changes to ships, always a big deal. Look at the drones rule changes. From AT11, we introduced brand new changes to restrict drones, because if you remember, it was just like sentry dummies and Gilas all day long because they were crazy overpowered, but they were hard nerfed down to just T1 only, so we've not seen really any comps that rely on drones since then, apart from the use of rep drones. So if there are any drones changes, that's going to be huge to the meta. EWAR rules changes are always massive, whether they allow scripts or not in certain things. Currently, ECM, you can fit racial ECM. They might go to multi-specs like EVNT do. I don't think they will, but that would be a huge change to the meta potentially. Look for the changes to rules as to what you can fit to your flagships, how they treat flagships overall, and also how many uniques you can bring to field at once. Last year, they restricted you to one unique per comp, which was a very, very big change, especially to the higher tier teams that can afford and have the resources to bring a lot of those. So currently, they are the same points as their equivalent class, but you may only bring one of them. Any change to that rule would be absolutely huge. We also have a Serpentis tournament. It's the last of the current run of each faction getting to sponsor a tournament. So it really is the end of an era in terms of the Alliance tournament. So they said at the roundtable at FanFest for EVE Sports that they wouldn't necessarily do a point reduction like they did for Blood Raiders, but there will certainly be something, at least to incentivize people bringing the Vindicator, Vigilant, and Daredevil, which are the 90% web Mega Blastery ships from the Serpentis. So yeah, there's a whole lot of intrigue and a lot of interest to come out of the rules changes, and AT season is here. I'm going to be writing so much. I'm so hyped. The AT is the best part of the year in EVE. It's going to be so good.
I can tell you're hyped the way that
It's so good.
And one thing I like about the new OT is the feeder tournament. That is more people have a chance to
Oh,
get
dude,
in.
it's so good. I'm so happy. It's so good.
That's new, right? They haven't had that before.
Nope.
It's
yeah,
like
I
the
think
way
it was definitely needed. Yeah.
It's like the way in for District 9 or whatever that the slums
Well,
find
it's
their
the
way
way
in.
in for Goonswarm, because Goonswarm, if you listen to Asher, he's wanted to get a Goonswarm team in for years and years and years, but they always fail the random draw. So now, after all his talk, he can prove himself that he actually does have a good team and actually bring them into the feeder tournament and qualify.
He already started training, so.
There we go.
Are you going to be on that team, Apple?
No, I don't have the time for it.
Yeah, it takes a certain kind of commitment to play that stuff. All right, so let's real quick do the meetups, Tiberius.
Yeah, so the events coming up over the next month or so. We're looking in-game events. We're looking at Theomachy, which begins on June 3rd. Go check that out. It's been an event that's run on in-game for a number of years now. They have a whole bunch of prizes and a whole bunch of things to give away. It's just a massive free-for-all with a bunch of random events and things like that thrown in. It will be absolute carnage. It's always good fun to get involved in that, so go and check that out, theomachy.com. For in real life meets, we have a EVE meet in Philly. That's obviously in Philadelphia, and that's at the High Spot Lanes. That is on the 27th of May at 1400. Then there's the Houston monthly meet again on the 27th of May in Houston, Texas at the King's Head Pub. Then the DCVA MD meetup is on Saturday the 27th of May at 6 p.m. and that's at the San Antonio Bar and Grill in Alexandria, Virginia. Then we have the Houston guys are meeting back up again for their monthly meetup at the I put down the King's Head Pub, but I think that's wrong. No, that's right. And that's on the 27th of May. And then EVE Glasgow is at the Hillhead Book Club in Glasgow on the 3rd of June. And you can find out about all these meets on evemeet.net.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiberius. I was thinking maybe we should do and just because I can do a Hollywood meetup and see if anybody would show up, because it's I'm from Los Angeles, so it would be easy for me to do. There is one in Pasadena; it's a bit far away.
Why don't you do like a South Central meetup?
Because I'm not from that area.
You can't travel a little bit.
That's true. I guess we could do both.
Be more exciting.
Yeah, it would be exciting. Let's see who the PvPers actually are.
Tips,
Well,
have we announced anything about Event Birmingham yet? Because that's the one I'm excited about.
No, not yet.
Please, I want to know.
I want to know too, but I don't know either. But I guess we're going to have to pester Nash about that. But there is something coming up for Event in Birmingham, but nothing's been confirmed on that yet. It may not even be in Birmingham. We don't know, but we'll soon find out about that. But if you are looking for a UK meet, General and I are looking to do something in the near future. So keep an eye out on EVE Meet for that too. And that probably will be around the London area. So like a London summer meet or something.
When we talk about these upcoming events, we're typically talking about smaller player meetups, but some of them are a little bit larger and require tickets and things like that. And so I'm going to throw this out there in advance. And I think I've talked about it before, but EVE Northeast is coming up. It's going to be, I think, around July 23rd or 24th. You can go to evenortheast.com for more details. But that is something that is interesting. It's EVE players going camping in the boondocks of Pennsylvania. So if you're relatively nearby the area or whatever, you might want to consider that because it's fun. We play beer pong and live in tents.
And from what I see, you guys go full out for it as well.
We
consoles and fireworks and barbecues and all sorts of cool stuff.
The advantage is it's outdoors, so you don't have all that contained aroma.
We drop tents like citadels, like Astra Hooses in HiSec.
That's hilarious. All right, Jintan and Apothny. I didn't hear too much from Jin like we usually do, and that's too bad because he's so funny. But you do have something coming up, a podcast about CSM at some point.
Yep. Go ahead.
We are.
God, I think
So British.
Yeah.
Just one of you picks
We're
it below.
recording the goddamn CSM podcast tonight. We will be recording it. We don't do it live, but we will be recording it and uploading it thereafter. The guests for tonight, I believe, are Sutonia, Rukiko, and
Reload.
So we've got the new kids on the block to talk about their initial foray into the CSM, what it's like coming into it as new guys, kind of a quick reminder for everyone for what the CSM, the fact that it is relevant all year round, not just during election season. And we'll also be discussing a few of the hot topics that the guys there can talk about.
That we deal with, yeah.
Awesome. All right, it's come time to end the show. I did want to give free talk for anybody who had anything they wanted to mention or talk about. Because that's a lot of people in our discussion here. I think it went relatively well. I'm amazed, because if this were any other podcast, people would be on top of each other all the time. But here you have two Brits that are trying to get through the same door at the same time.
I do.
And that was the only traffic jam.
Very, very quickly. I'm trying to do an unprecedented amount of AT coverage, more than any previous year, more than the team summaries. But I need elves to roll and aggregate data for me. I've got a couple guys doing it, but I need a lot more because there's so much to go through. So if anybody's interested in, basically, I assign people the amount of data I need for a certain article, and then whatever CZ pays me for the article, I will just give them half straight off the board. So if you want to make a bit of ISK, helping me do AT coverage just by, it's tedious work. It's just going through data, but it's not hard either. So just hit me up on Discord or wherever, because I really need people to help me to do coverage of the AT.
I kid you not, his channel name is Apothny's Sweatshop.
Forest elves, Santa's elves, or Keebler elves?
I'm going to go with the Faerun.
It's unbelievable.
Wow. That was a reference to school. Nobody got it.
Dungeons and Dragons, probably, knowing Apothny, who runs a Dungeons and Dragons group. Do you want to say
two, actually?
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much to Judge Sati Mayor. That's kind of funny. Who donated some money during this podcast. That always helps. It helps when they look at stats at INN, they kind of see how popular a show is, and they put that over here. Then they see how much money a show brings in, and they put that over here. So Open Comms whomps us because they get so many tips and stuff. Not saying I want tips, but I guess I am saying you could register $1 or $2 every once in a while. That would be great because then we'd have
do a
full
shot,
stats.
bro.
Yeah, if I could drink, I would do it. I guess I can drink, but it's just 7 in the morning over here, so I don't know how that would go. I can do sips of tea or something.
Yeah, make the rest of your day go absolutely fine. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I hate to cut off a show with this many good people. If anybody else has another topic, we can always go overtime, but if not, there's no point in just looking at ourselves. In that case, thanks very much for everybody who showed up to watch. Got, looks like the 260, 265 people watching live. There will be 1,000 or more people who listen to this in the podcast form, and other people, hundreds, that check it out in the post-recording, either here or on YouTube. Thank you all for watching this stuff. It tells us that we're doing something right and that we need to keep going. So that's why we've been doing it for over a year. I want to thank everybody. Oh, Tibbs, go ahead.
I was just laughing at the fact that somebody in Twitch chat asked if they could get a PAP for watching.
Yeah, maybe we should.
I'm surprised the Imperium doesn't do that.
I'm amazed as well.
I'm clean. I don't know about the rest of you people.
Then you know what would happen?
Wrong kind of PAP.
So somebody would write an article out there somewhere talking about how the Imperium is, giving PAPs to monetize their Twitch channel.
Oh, yeah. Come on, we all know who it would be.
I don't know. We don't know who it would be.
PAPs, by the way,
it would be everyone's favorite blogger, Noisy Gamer. Definitely not a person whose name begins with S and ends with Eraf.
By the way, what does PAP stand for?
Participation link.
Yeah.
It's the
That
same thing
doesn't-
that NC Dot does, except if you don't kill people, you still get like tracked.
And thanks
They
to the
track me by
crest,
how many trainers I've lost.
the crest link, people don't have to click on the link anymore. It now goes all automatically. Just push a few buttons, and everybody gets a nice pep link. And then you can see how much what card does and how active they are, and if they do their part for staying in Alliance.
Well, by the way, that last episode with Arathon at Arathon Larrikin is up to about 1,800 views or listens, and that's not the views that's just the podcast listens. So yeah, people do listen to the podcast eventually, and that's inside of 1 week. So yeah, if we could award PAPs, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, I don't know. Bastion got one, and it came direct from Carnero, so I think that absolutely applies.
What?
He just got it gifted. All right.
I don't think
Okay.
Vince would accept a Bastion Pap from us, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like Seamus's comment. I don't know if people caught it. He's like, "Hey, I'm clean."
Of course I am.
You
I'm a professor
tell
of Eve University.
Vince-
What else would you expect?
Tell Vince to get his butt to Eve Vegas. We need to have a cocktail.
People want to meet him. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks. Gosh, we got a lot of people. Apothny, Apple, Pear, and FC for Imperium. Thank you for showing up. Carneros, Dirk, General, Stargazer, Jintan, Noisy Gamer, Ashdrathi, who was here earlier, Seamus, and Tiberius. What a big crew. What a great crew. Thanks, guys, for watching them. If you want to support this podcast, you can. It's Patreon/Materol. And please support other people who are content creators in this form with tips and subscribes and stuff like that. I hate begging, but it's part of this, keeping this kind of thing going. But you don't need to pay money. It's comments and, thanks and stuff like that. Just reach out to these people who do all this stuff for you, because it's their time
Share
and
it.
their work.
Share it with your friends and courtmates and alliances.
That's right. Also, if you wanted to join INN, we are always looking for writers and artists and programmers and even administrative people. There is ISK to be made. I guess it can add up to a Plex.
Come get your dank iskies.
They pay very well. Always team building at INN. That's why we have such a great team. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you guys for showing up. Great show, a lot of fun. And we will see you next week on Talking in Stations.
Kokina semdol ka ke mo fa seda.